Memory is complicated. We can't remember everything, but at the same time, we don't want to forget too much. A look at Black Mirror and Still Alice with Dr. Tom Wisniewski of NYU-Langone's Pearl I. Barlow Center for Memory. Ahead on Science Goes to the Movies. Welcome to Science Goes to the Movies, a look at the stories of science and how they change our culture. I'm Faith Salie, and today we're going to look at Black Mirror and Still Alice, and the importance of both remembering and forgetting. And to sort it all out, we have Dr. Thomas Wisniewski of Pearl I. Barlow Center for Memory Evaluation and Treatment at NYU-Langone. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
From the mind of Charlie Brooker, the Netflix series Black Mirror is a chilling look at technology run amok. And one of the central themes introduced in Season 1, Episode 3, is the fictional concept of pristine memory that can be recorded, played back, and seen by other people.
Okay, great. It's been really great, Liam. We really hope to look forward to seeing you again. Liam, we really hope to look forward to seeing you again.
So Thomas, in this episode, one of the women at this dinner party, she works for the Memory Grain Company, and she defends these implants, saying that real memories can fade and fictional ones, fake ones, can be introduced. Is that true?
Well, certainly we're pretty good at forgetting stuff. So real memories do fade. But implanting false memories, that's something that's quite difficult to do. But there are, in fact, techniques that have been studied where memories can certainly be successfully introduced into people. And that's things like imagination inflation, false feedback, and memory implantation. So that topic has been well studied in the arena of making people remember false childhood memories.
Yeah.
For example, if you ask someone to repeatedly imagine doing something like getting stuck up a tree as a child, you can get them to actually believe that that's a true memory. Also, you can give them false information repeatedly, and then they will come to believe it.
That's what people call gaslighting, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. So in psychological studies, it's been found that approximately 20 to 40% of people are what's called believers. So when you apply these sorts of techniques, you can actually get them to truly believe a false memory exists. So that's a substantial minority of the population that you could actually implant false memories using these sorts of techniques. So human memory is very malleable. So this gets to issues like witness testimony at trials. So people do not remember past events very well, and they're very open to manipulation.
This is it's so sinister. It's terrifying. It seems like a tool of war to be able...
Well, the Department of Defense has studied this extensively, and it has very significant legal implications. So for instance, in this country, it's possible to be convicted of a crime by eyewitness testimony. But in the Innocence Project, for example, where they looked at overturning convictions based on DNA evidence, false eyewitness testimony was the #1 cause of people being falsely locked up. So the concrete numbers are for the last Innocence Project, they looked at 230 individuals that were falsely imprisoned, 75% of them were for eyewitness testimony, so 179. And the false remembering was quite striking. In 53% of those cases, it was cross-race misidentification.
Wow.
In 38%, it was more than one eyewitness falsely identifying the individual. And this had quite significant consequences in that for the falsely accused people, with the new DNA evidence, in about 36% of cases, the actual criminal was identified, and in half those cases, that individual had gone on to do further crimes. So not only were people locked up falsely based on eyewitness testimony, it allowed criminals to get away with further crimes. So eyewitness testimony and people's memory of events is not so good.
It's, I mean, we think of you as doing scientific work, working on the brain and memory, but you're also doing cultural and humane work.
Sure.
When you
So memory is such a fundamental human characteristic. It really divides us from other animals, our ability to manipulate memories. But it is also something that's extremely malleable and open to being altered.
In this dystopian world of Black Mirror, you can never forget or rewrite a horrible event. So people are doomed to relive the pain of these events over and over. Are we hardwired to forget things so we don't have to experience that pain?
I think that that's absolutely true. We don't want our minds to be overcrowded with past events. Remembering everything would actually stifle creativity. So there's a subset of very rare individuals with highly superior autobiographical memory, or hyperthymesia. Thymesis is the Greek word for memory. And these individuals remember every detail of their past lives. You can give them a date, and they will remember exactly what they did on that particular date. But most...
Does that prevent them from being the most they can be? Because they're so full of memory?
Most of these individuals are very unhappy because they're continually reliving their lives, and they're second guessing. If I had done this, if I had bought those bitcoins whenever, and it prevents them from planning for the future or even imagining the future.
It's such an interesting perspective because most of us bemoan, oh, I can't remember this. And I'm close to someone who did not have a happy childhood, and he often says, I can't remember. I can't remember I hardly have any memories. So it seems like it's the body or the mind or the soul's way of moving on.
Right, you're ready for the next event. So it is a deliberate evolutionary characteristic that we're able to forget things. I mean, we remember the essential facts, but the day-to-day events we want to forget, and it allows our brain to function more effectively and be more malleable.
And I think Virginia Woolf, coming at it from the artistic side, would talk about moments of being, which are those moments worth remembering. That because we don't want to remember the banalities, right? That just clutters it up. But the moments of being, or sort of crystallize those turning points in our lives, even if they were simple, of what sort of make life worth living.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can treasure those events in your life and not all the other clutter.
Yeah. In the 4th season of Black Mirror, there's an episode called Crocodile, where all these recorded memories people have stored are used by the insurance industry to assess the exact incidence of an auto accident, with chilling results. But the bleakness aside, the woman collecting people's memories brings along a bottle of beer and an old love song to help evoke specifics of the events. Why smells and sounds? What does olfactory and auditory input have to do with memory?
So the part of our brain that's responsible for memory, autobiographical memory, the hippocampus, is part of the limbic system. And limbus means rim. The limbic system is in the border between the cerebral cortex and the brainstem. That part of the brain is also responsible for the emotional memory of olfaction stimulus. So these things are very closely tied together. For example, the hippocampus, amygdala, and the septal nuclei are part of what's called the rhinencephalon, which in Greek means the nose brain. So olfaction is something that's very much tied to our memory system, and having those stimuli paired is something that can enhance the memory of something or really make you remember it better.
In that same episode, a man remembers details surrounding a pretty woman that he passed on the street because, he had an emotional response to her. Yeah. Is that clinically true?
So again, tying a pleasurable memory, an event, can make you remember the whole episode much better. And again, that's the anatomical proximity of the hippocampus to, for example, these pleasure centers, the nucleus accumbens, and the whole limbic system being involved in that type of emotional content and memory tied to olfaction, to visual inputs, auditory inputs, etc. So that part of the brain, all of these inputs are coming together and acting on our ability to remember things either better or less well.
Is it fair, I know this is extremely simplifying things, but is it fair to say terrible events, something in us wants to forget, easy to forget, and satisfying, lovely events, our brain knows how to hold on to them?
One would think so, but I think we're actually pretty good at forgetting both types of events, unfortunately. So there isn't really good scientific evidence to suggest that we're better at remembering either one of those more effectively. We're pretty good at forgetting.
What is the stuff of memory? Because I see my memories like a movie mostly, right? And I can transmit that vision to you verbally.
Sure.
But could we ever do it digitally? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, does a memory have any actual corporeal elements to it that could someday be recorded on an outside device like they are in Black Mirror? Or are memories just a feeling?
We're a long way away from being able to record memories. But in our brains, they do have an actual physical presence. They're called an engram. And the physical basis for these memories are differences in synaptic impulses, their strength, and also potentially in the rewiring of your neurons and the forming of new synapses. So our memories are really, they have a physical presence in the brain. And a very substantial percentage of our brain are a memory storage system. And different types of memories are incorporated in different parts of the brain.
You said it's called an engram?
Engram.
Engram?
E-N-G-R-A-M.
Engram. What does an engram look like? Are all our memories on these little...
So it's the wiring of our brain. Memories actually change either the strength of a synaptic transmission, or the synapses and the wiring can actually be reformed based on a memory. So our memory system, our brains are highly dynamic. The brain changes as we remember things and as we forget. So our brain is a wonderful, highly dynamic system, and being able to really record that complexity, there's no way we can do that, but we can measure it in much more simple systems. So in lower animals, we can have a better idea of what memories actually, what the wiring of those memories is.
Do you think there will be a day when we can record our memories on some kind of outside device?
It's very hard for me to imagine something like that.
Is that a good thing?
Complexity.
Is it a good thing that you can't imagine that we can't?
I think so. Our memories are kind of sacrosanct. They're what makes you an individual. So I think that our science is nowhere near close being able to do that, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, in Black Mirror, technology kind of smashes into fascism when they're trying to control people's memories and share them.
Right.
And it does make you think about how personal and sacred your memories
Absolutely.
are.
Yeah.
But then, when you add into the mix that our memories are so fallible, you wonder if I am the stuff of memories, but my memories aren't correct.
Right.
What does that add up to?
Well, we're changeable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And our brains are malleable, as are our memories.
Are babies born without any engrams? Do babies born without memory?
So autobiographical memory doesn't really formulate very well until children are 8 or 9 years old.
Really?
So some children do report earlier memories, but for most, it's sort of around that age.
When you say that, meaning that when you're an adult, you start remembering things that happened when you were 8 or 9 and not earlier?
So for most people, the very clear memories, autobiographical memories at those earlier time points, they don't occur. They can be suggested by pictures, by the rest of the family, but they're not very well formulated. And there may be single episodes that get remembered, but for the most part, it's forgotten.
I want to touch briefly on Blade Runner. In the original Blade Runner, the replicant Rachel very nearly passed Lieutenant Deckard's Turing test. She was so close to being human because she had human memories implanted in her core. Is it the memories that make us human?
I think memories are a very important part of what makes us human. But it's, I think, more than that. It's our ability to manipulate memories and make decisions based on them. It's our prefrontal cortex, which is so highly developed versus other animals. So it's not only our ability to form memories, but to manipulate those memories and use them for communication and language. So the memories are certainly a core part of that, but the rest of the brain does so much more.
In our discussion of Black Mirror, we talked about why it's important for memories to fade. But now let's move on to Still Alice for a discussion on losing memories. In this 2014 film, Julianne Moore plays Alice, a successful linguistic professor facing early onset Alzheimer's. In a lecture, Moore's character tells an audience of students the word stock of a given language is the essence of memory. And then, as the Alzheimer's progresses, the first thing she loses is her words. Does it always start with words?
So it can, but much more commonly, Alzheimer's patients forget their autobiographical memory. So what they did yesterday or the day before, that sort of presentation is much more common. But in the movie, because she was a linguist and words were such a core to her essence, it was likely that her Alzheimer's disease had more of a presentation with word loss because that was something that she personally treasured so much. And the loss of words was emotionally troubling for her.
In this movie, Alice has something called genetic Alzheimer's.
Right.
Versus, are there different kinds of Alzheimer's?
There are, very much so. So the genetic form of Alzheimer's disease, early onset Alzheimer's disease is a less common form of AD. It affects about 5% of all AD individuals, and in about 10% of that 5%, there are specific mutations in the presenilin 1, 2 genes or the amyloid precursor protein gene. And those typically are what's called autosomal dominant. So meaning that your children will have a 50% chance of carrying that particular mutation, and they're typically almost fully penetrant. So meaning if you have the mutation, you're going to get the
will
disease.
Express itself.
Right, exactly. If you live long enough.
In the movie, Alice feels ashamed, and that seems so wrong. Why should she feel ashamed?
Unfortunately, there still is quite a social stigma with dementia. And in a sense, people are very fearful themselves of losing their mind. It's something that is in many ways viewed as worse than having other diseases like cancer or heart disease. Because
do you understand that?
It's so closely tied to who we are.
Yeah.
So there's a fear of getting that, and certainly with my own patients, they're very reluctant to tell their friends and even other members of their own family that they're afflicted with the disorder. So that's certainly something that we need to work on changing for a disorder which is extremely common and becoming more common.
Why is it becoming more common?
Well, the population of the United States and the whole globe is getting older. So as the average age increases, the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease and dementia gets much higher. The concrete numbers are in the United States, there are about 5.4 million Alzheimer's individuals now, but by 2050, it's likely to rise to 16 million.
Wow.
So the numbers are huge.
And what is a realistic hope for a cure or more efficacious treatment?
I think that there is a possibility of having disease-modifying illnesses in the next few years. There are many things which are currently in phase 3 clinical trial, some of which are showing a great deal of promise. So I'm very hopeful that within the next few years there will be some disease-modifying therapy. But I think Alzheimer's disease is a heterogeneous disorder with many things that can drive the pathology. So it's unlikely that there will be one cure. There will be things that can make the disease better and progress more slowly. At the moment, unfortunately, we don't have any disease-modifying treatment at all. We have medications that help some of the symptoms and are useful, but there is a great need to have something better.
In season 9 of BBC's Doctor Who, the reboot, everyone's favorite Stark girl from Game of Thrones plays a recurring character named Ashidra. And Doctor Who gives the human Viking woman Ashidra an eternal life. But her human brain is physically incapable of remembering everything that's happened to her in her never-ending lifetimes. Is that true? Do human brains simply not have enough hard disk space to remember everything?
So luckily, I don't think that's true. So it's not like we have a hard drive that at some point will get too full and won't take any more memories.
Because, I mean, like, poetically, it seems like our memories are centered in our brains, right?
Right.
So is there a question of real estate?
No, so we're so good at forgetting that there's always room for more things to be remembered. And then hopefully we will remember the important details. So I don't think our brains would ever hit a full stage. So luckily that's not something we have to worry about.
But I did read that we do sort of fill up. The older we get, we have this I guess, I don't know the data analogy to use, but we do sort of have a hard drive of memories, right?
Well,
And we run out of room in a way. You're saying it's not a physical face thing, a physical space thing, but we can't hold them all in there?
So I think we can keep on incorporating new memories as we experience new things. So in a sense, we can always learn more, but it does come with forgetting past events. So, and it will, there is a tie-in that there is some space limitation as to where you will have those memories. But it's not that you will fully wipe out the past. You will still remember those key events in your past life.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Thank you. I will never forget this fascinating conversation. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.